What's up, Eager to Pleasers? Welcome back to another episode of the Eager to Please podcast. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever felt like you're constantly trying to earn your place? Like if you just worked harder, achieved more, became better, then maybe you'd finally feel worthy. Or maybe this feeling shows up in smaller ways. You say yes when you mean no. You overthink conversations. You feel responsible for other people's comfort. At some point, a lot of us learned that being agreeable, useful, or impressive kept us safe. So we convinced ourselves that if we could just prove our value, we'd finally deserve other people's approval. Well, joining us today for a deeper conversation about chasing worthiness, what it looks like, and why so many of us do it, and what happens when we stop trying to please others, is co-founder and Chief Operations Officer of Fresh Start's Registry, Jenny Dreizen. Thanks for joining us to talk about this, Jenny. I know it's a big one, and it's a hard one.
I'm so grateful to be here today, Natalie. I love talking about this stuff. I like whatever it is. I like getting weird and deep. So I'm so happy to be here.
Yay! Well, you're in the right place. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Before we dig in, I want to know how things are going at Fresh Starts, because that's kind of how you and I got introduced through your sister, Olivia, hi, Olivia, if you're listening to this episode at some point, thanks so much for connecting us.
Things are going great. I think Olivia and I, we feel like every year is a beautiful new reinvention of the company, and we get a little bit deeper into it every year. We started about 4.5 years ago. The company is about as old as my relationship with my husband, which is helpful. So we started about 4.5 years ago, and last year was really getting clear on divorce. I think for a long time we were like, no, we're for everybody, and we always are for everybody. But I think when we really leaned into serving the divorcing community, our message just got a lot louder and a lot more amplified. And then, we were talking about doing something exciting, doing something different, just sort of collecting some articles that our experts wrote and that we wrote and putting it on a website and calling it a magazine. And then we sort of got into looking into it, and we realized there's actually, there was no national divorce-focused publication about divorce. No, there was no national divorce-focused publication in the United States, and really anywhere. And there were a couple of somewhat happening, maybe pieces in California, something like that. And so we just started thinking about it, and I love layouts, and I'm a graphic designer at heart. So I just started laying it out, and we ended up having this beautiful digital magazine, which I spent all day working on today, the next issue. So, it's a little scary when you spend 3 months preparing for one issue, and then you're like, oh, I have 3 weeks to do the next one. But the good news is I found out I can lay out a whole magazine in about a day. So that's comforting to know. And so that's been doing really well. I think people are so hungry for it. It's so funny. Divorce happens to more than 50% of marriages, right? First marriages, about 50%. There's a divorce in America every 45 seconds. Obviously, not through the night, but it's on average. Yet still we are considered a niche topic.
Right.
So we were just recently in conversation with some podcasting companies, which we have great podcasts and we're so proud of them. And we're all independently produced. And the podcast company said, this is great, but it's a little niche. And I thought, to who? To who is this niche? Because it's happening all over the place, but we're not talking about it. And we're not serving the community, and we're letting people, go to these Facebook groups and get help where in some of these Facebook groups, divorce professionals aren't allowed to be. So it's just people, it's like the blind leading the blind. We're so many, I think, people have a lot of opinions on AI, but I think that ChatGPT can be a wonderful tool. It is not a divorce attorney. It is not a divorce coach, and it is not a therapist. And what we need to be doing is human to human embracing these people as they're navigating these challenges. So hopefully, reaching them over podcasts and over magazines and over, all of these other ways, and being on other people's podcasts, what we want people to hear and see is that they deserve dignity, and they deserve respect, and they deserve information and education. And this is not something to be ashamed of. Divorce is just a transition of a relationship. And you can do it with class and grace and kindness for the other person, and if everybody's on their best behavior. And so, so it's good. Everything is really good. I think Olivia and I went into the new year feeling really positive about the company, and like we're doing work. We wake up every day and we get to do this beautiful work and get to help people. I don't know how I would be doing other work at this point. Yeah.
And I love all of that. Yes, that is amazing. The biggest thing I think that comes to mind for me of what you two are doing is just the connection piece. Like you're connecting people to resources, like you said, to humans, because divorce is such an isolating event, personally and like within, your friend groups and that kind of thing. And you can really feel like you're on an island without having the proper support and tools. Yeah. So I think what you guys are doing is amazing. So thank you for leading the charge on this.
I think so that it's one of those things that everybody doesn't want to talk about, but it's happening. I always say I'm not a mom, but I was always very aware, especially as an outsider, as an aunt, when I would go to the classes, the music class with my nephew and my sister, the conversations that were happening inside the music room of like, oh no, my baby's getting 12 hours of sleep a night. And, we don't co-sleep and everything. And then you go out to the parking lot and you catch up with the other moms that and they're like, oh my God, they're not sleeping at all. And I sleep in the crib actually. And it's like, these are the conversations we need to be having. Like, I have no interest in that fake conversation that happens of us all going, no, everything's great. Everything's great. Like, let's get down to it and let's embrace each other and not make each other, let's get real, not make each other feel ashamed when, you say, I sleep in the crib. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a good pillow? Like, we want to make sure that people are supported wherever they are. So I appreciate that.
Yes. I love it. No, thank you for the update. I love following you all. And like I said, I think the work you're doing is so important and impactful for sure. So I know we got to know Olivia a little bit on a previous episode, and now we're fortunate to have you here. So I'd like to get to know you a little bit. If you want to share a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are, obviously, and why you felt so compelled to talk about this particular subject of worthiness. Out of all the, topics we were kind of throwing back and forth.
For sure.
The one that kind of stuck out to me.
I'd love the middle child of 3 or 4, depending on whose household you're in. At my mom's house, I'm the middle of 3. At my dad's, I am the middle of 4, but also the other middle child is my little brother. So I think that's different. I think it's different when you're a boy and you're the only boy in the family. And so I have always been, my sister, Olivia, is amazing. We've always gotten along very well, but she was born with medical complications. So there was like a little bit of a glass child syndrome happening with me as well. And I was always a little bit in her shadow. Like, I think in school, I was always Olivia's sister. When I was applying to colleges, I got into her college and I got a nice scholarship. And I was like, I don't think I can keep doing this for the rest of my life. Then I'm her business partner, which was maybe not the best idea, but it's working out well. But, so I was middle child of 3. My parents got divorced when I was 7. I definitely felt we didn't know other kids whose parents were divorced. We went to a very sort of, we basically our school that we went to growing up was like where the Great Gatsby was set. Like it's very posh, and there was not other people who were going through this at the time. Our parents were a little younger than the other parents, and we were the only Jewish family, and we were going through a divorce. So there was a lot going on. And I remember so badly wanting to connect with other kids whose parents were going through divorce. Like really, I wanted that, and I had none of that. And then, we grew up and our dad had our little sister. Both of my younger siblings are engaged now, which is insane. I'm like, but you're babies. You're my babies. And so our dad had a little sister, and our parents did a really good job of, keeping things calm and, sort of not making the divorce that big of an issue, and making it seem like a benefit. And it was. I can't even imagine what they would be like if they were still together now. They're very different people. They were high school sweethearts. So, you make a decision when you're 15, and sometimes you don't always have to follow through with that for the rest of your life. And so I ended up, we went to a Quaker high school, and I graduated, and I went to NYU. I studied religious studies. And pretty soon after my college graduation, about 2 years, I ended up meeting a guy where I'd met him before, and we started dating. And he is not a bad person. He's just not my person. We were together for 10 years. And I think that getting to the issue of worthiness, I think that between being a middle child and whatever other stuff we went through, it wasn't always easy with various parents. Everybody had a lot of growing up to do. I definitely had a sense of, I need to perform. I need to make sure that I'm good enough. And I think I've always been a high achiever. I'm a perfectionist, but not I never knew I was a perfectionist because I don't actually care about getting things perfect. I care about just getting it right all the time. Like I don't need to get an A+ on the paper. That doesn't matter to me at all, but I need to be right. Like as a person, I need to be right. I need to have thought it through. I need to have considered every possible negative outcome and, performed properly to be worthy of love. I mean, it just felt like that. I don't think I understood that. And I think that, however my ex he was primed for that. And he was ready to press those buttons. And I really don't think it was malicious. We've left things on a very good note, but I just always felt like I wasn't enough. And that was definitely validated in my own head by the fact that we were together for a while. And it's funny, I never wanted to get married. My mom and my stepdad have been together since I was 7, and they're not legally married. My grandmother and my grandfather were together since 1983 until their deaths, and they were never legally married. It wasn't particularly important to me to get legally married. I really just wanted to feel chosen. I wanted to feel like somebody really wanted to be with me. I didn't feel like that when I was with my ex. And so I think as a default to that, I thought, well, maybe I can get it from this thing. Maybe I can get it from marriage. Maybe when he proposes, I'll feel it. Maybe when he says his vows, I'll feel it. So I sort of started on that journey with him of what we're, first it was, when are we going to live together? And then we lived together. And then it's, okay, well, and it was that thing you go back and forth. It's like, well, it's not that big of a deal. Well, why do you need to get engaged? Not that big of a deal. Well, if it's not that big of a deal, why won't you just propose to me? And it sort of went around like that. And I felt very sure that, if I was thinner, that he would have proposed. And I still feel like that. Yeah. Yeah. And I still feel like that. And I feel like that because
I hate that.
After we broke up, he said to me, when you gained weight, I didn't like that. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really know what to do. I said to him, that's your own internalized fat phobia. That has nothing to do with me. But I felt like that. And then eventually, about 8 or 9 years into it's so funny because at the time, right, like you're like every year means so much. And now I'm like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. He bought a ring. He had the ring for a year or two. And he did propose to me. And I was disappointed to find out that did not do it. That wasn't the emotional hit that I needed. And it wasn't a bad proposal. We got down on one knee on the beach, but I was in a bikini and I said, oh, well, he must like me because he proposed while I was in a bikini, And you have my own body issues, and you involve it with that, and somebody that's always encouraging you to exercise in a way that doesn't feel quite like it's about really your health, and so, and then other stuff too, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But just like, it felt like everything was a worthiness test with him. And again, I'm going to say it again. So if he listens to this, I don't think he listens to the podcast I'm on. Like, I don't think it was intentional. I just think it was a culture clash. And I just think it was two families that were very different that came together in that way. But I do feel like I was primed to have the buttons that he could push. Yeah. So I felt, I did all of the domestic labor pretty much in our home. And we made, when I moved in with him, when we moved in together, we made down to the dollar the same amount of money. We were working at the same company at the same time, at the time, and we made exactly the same amount of money. We were splitting everything exactly in two. And yet I did all of the dishes. I made all of the lunches. I made all of the dinners. I did all of the shopping. Like, I could ask him to go pick something up at the store, but he had no idea what was in the fridge. And he acted like it was something that, like, how would he ever figure that out? Like, how would he know that? But you just know what to make when you look in the fridge. And I was like, yeah, I didn't come to this earth like that. And every meal, you know, it's funny, I screenshotted this because I was thinking about this when I was taking my pre-podcast little nap. My husband and I kind of take a nap every night after dinner. It's a great habit. But so I was thinking about this and I wanted to screenshot it. This is from Stacey McCann's, she's a social worker. Stacey McCann, she's a social worker. And she posted, cooking is actually such a super vulnerable task. And maybe that's why women do it and also why they grow to hate it. And she had posted this whole reel about how it's such a vulnerable task because it's like you're spending money on it. You're trying to fill other people. You're trying to satisfy somebody else. You're trying to get into their brain. You're trying to make something nutritious. It has to be good. Like, there's so much that goes into just cooking a meal that I mean, we didn't have kids and I was exhausted. And every 6 to 8 weeks, I would have like what I call like looking down the hallway of my life moment, you know, where it's just like in a movie where it's just like a zooming hallway that goes on forever. That's what every meal felt like. And it felt like I never got it right. And every meal that I served him was a worthiness test. It really felt like that. And I never got it right. I was never going to get it right. It was never going to be good enough. And it was exhausting because it was like, I would say to him, well, when you give somebody 85% of all of the labor in a house, of course, all the mistakes are going to fall in their 85%. You only do 15% of what goes on around here. And it just went on like that. And it wasn't a bad relationship and it wasn't a mean relationship and it wasn't contentious, but we would have those arguments, you know, I do everything, you need to do more, and nothing really ever changed. But what it came down to for me was I don't feel loved. I don't feel like you love me and I don't feel worthy of your love because every time I forget to close the shower curtain, instead of just closing the shower curtain so that it can dry off, you have to tell me that I forgot to close the shower curtain. You know, that kind of thing where it's like passive aggressive, like you know, it's not see something, passive say something, aggressive. Just see something, do something. It's okay. It's okay. Not the New York City subway system. We're going to be okay. And so he proposed and we had planned a wedding for May of 2020 and then COVID hit. And so we canceled the wedding. We pushed it off till September of 2020. And then we pushed it off again because I was like, I don't want to get married. You know, I've waited this long. We've been together for nearly 10 years at that point. I was like, we waited this long. I don't want to get married in a mask. And I didn't want to bring people together and, you know, for no reason. And so we just thought like, okay, well, maybe we'll just like have a baby. Or I said, maybe we'll have a baby and then we'll get married. And we ended up making it till June 2021. Our 10-year anniversary was in March 2021. And it's so sad because I think I lost it, but I used to have this video of us toasting and I say, I love you on the video to him and he doesn't say it back. Like, it's crazy. It's like, it's so sad. And we had gone out to dinner. We had this big argument. I don't remember what it was about. Like, right. Who even knows what it was about? Right before my dad's birthday, which is June 9th. And it was the first time I ever wondered if he was like not going to show up someplace that he was supposed to. And he did. He came to dinner. But there's a picture that my sister's then boyfriend took of us. And you can see like, he's like leaning. He does not want to be there with me. And so I wasn't that surprised when a week later after that, we just like went to go watch a show and I went to go take my contacts out and I took my contacts out and I just started crying. And he was like, what's wrong? And I said, you know, we have to figure out what's going on here. And we've been together from when I was 23 until I was 33. Like, that's a really significant chunk of your life. And he, you know, my sister has 2 boys. And when they were born, I'd said to him, like, if you're not Uncle Blank now, you're never going to be. So are you in or are you out? And he was like, I'm in. And I said, great. And I'm like searching for any sign that he wants to be with me. I'm like, this is it. This is it. And so he was their uncle and then their dad left. And so I was like, I don't want to take another man out of these children's lives. And so I said, we have to figure this out. And he said, no. And there's a whole other story where My dad was putting his cat down the next day. So I knew that like my dad was going to come to I lived in Queens. And so my dad and my brother were going to bring the cat's corpse to my apartment, and we were all going to drive my car because I had a car. They just sold it, but I had a car, and they were going to drive the car out from Queens to Long Island where my mother lives. And this is a divorce lovely story. They were going to bury the cat at my mom's house so that my brother could always visit the cat. And so I knew that my dad was coming the next day. And so I knew that I had this like, I knew that if I didn't push it then, it would probably be another year or 2 years before I allowed this to come up again. And I would just be unhappy. I would just keep being unhappy. And because maybe a year before that, we'd sort of had that conversation of like, he said like, I don't know if I love you anymore. And I was like, you do cover my ears, like you do. And so I said to him, no, let's have the conversation. And he said, I don't think I love you anymore. And I don't think we should have a baby together. And I was grateful. And I've told him I'm grateful because it made sense. It felt like that. That's how it felt. And they took off my engagement ring, which I had like, I had shopped for that ring. Like it was very hard for me to find an engagement ring that felt right, which is funny, right? Because you're like, maybe there's a sign. Which I always tell people, I'm like, if you want an engagement ring and you want to sell it, don't go for a really thin gold engagement ring with black diamond, because this is a $2,000 ring I got $70 for when I sold it. Yeah. And he was like, I want you to have it. He told me to keep it. And I didn't sell it for a number of years, but I took it off and I was like, I could see the clouds part. I knew that my life was going to be beautiful. I just knew it. In that moment, I knew it. And I left the next morning. And you know what? That night was the only time I got the emotional hit that I really like it right after I broke up with him, which I've seen before with men. After you break up with them, suddenly they give you everything you want, emotionally. And I moved out, and it was so interesting because I think then I started sort of teasing out, what is this worthiness thing? And what was I reaching for? And what was I not getting? I fell in love with my husband pretty quickly after. He had been somebody that I had, my brother went to school in Scotland, and my mom and I were visiting here, and we walked into a museum in 2010, and he worked at the museum, still works at the museum. And we had sort of kept like really intermittent Facebook touch, and he had reached out to me before like on my 10-year anniversary, actually, with my ex. He reached out to me, and I told my ex, and he was, flattering, but I said like, I'm engaged. And I reached out to him, and I was just like, we'll see what happens. Like, I didn't think I would move to Scotland. I thought I would flirt with a cute guy for a little. I thought he was Scottish. He's not Scottish. He's English. Like, I didn't know anything about him, and it progressed pretty quickly. But I think the thing that was most interesting was he would say to me, like, you don't have to do anything to be worthy of my love. Like, you being alive is just, that's all it has to. And I was like, I know. I mean, he's amazing, but
like the fan
I feel very, 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 very lucky. And I would say to him too, though, like if he had taken me out when I was 22 and visiting, it would not have worked. I had a lot of growing up to do. I'm sure he had a lot of growing up to do too, so in those 10 years that we knew each other, but weren't together. And so I started sort of teasing out what was this worthiness thing, and where did it come from? And how does it keep us in systems that don't serve us? And how does it keep us serving people that are very happy to keep pressing that button that says not worthy, not worthy, not worthy? So that's sort of how, and then from there was the idea that Olivia had brought to me maybe 2 years before, of this divorce registry, which I was like then sitting in my empty apartment, and I hit like, buy on like a $10,000 cart of items to fill my apartment. And I was like, that divorce registry would be really helpful right now. So we didn't have divorce registries, but we would have both liked them. So we hope other people can. So that's sort of how we got to where I am now.
Yeah. Nice. So much good stuff in that to unpack, because I do think, one, where you fall in birth order, I think has a lot to do with like how you feel, because like Olivia, I'm the oldest. Well, kind of. I've got two older sisters, from my dad's first marriage. And then when my dad married my mom, I'm the oldest of my younger sisters. So I could be a middle child or I could be the oldest, but I feel like because there's such an age gap between my older sisters and me, I'm the oldest child, and taking on, you know, the perfectionism and, you know, the seriousness. And that's not to say that every oldest child has those, but like you as a middle, it's like you feel kind of torn, like you're always in the shadow of your older sibling. And my younger sister, I know for a fact, felt like that because she was always the fun one and I was always the studious one. And I hated those labels because it kind of pitted us against each other at one point, as I'm sure you could, you know, probably relate. You know, but I love that you two are working together now. So I want to just say that.
We always occupied really different spaces. And I think that birth order is so interesting, but I also think it's so complicated because, like you said, like you're technically a middle child, but you're not. Like, I think my little sister, who is her mother's only child, right? And her mom and our dad aren't together and haven't been together for a long time. So like in her mom's house, raised as an only child, in our house with my dad, raised as a youngest, but also we were only there every other weekend and she was with him 50% of the time. So also an only child. It's so complicated. And I think in our family, I feel like a middle child and an oldest daughter at the same time. Because I think that, you know, Olivia and I sort of traded the role a little bit, but I definitely felt that like need to, I think I felt a little unseen sometimes. And so I felt the need to perform and I felt the need to be perfect, but you know, and to sort of, and the peacemaker, right? Olivia's a little more outspoken than I am. So then I was like trying to, you know, make peace between like her and my dad and things like that. And that was complicated and it remains complicated. I mean, they're good, but you know, parents, just because you grow up doesn't mean that everything resolves, you know, it stays complicated. And so I think trying to get it right. And then also being, I never really thought about this, but being on display as a child of divorce and wanting to not be a bad ambassador for that or a bad ambassador for your family. I mean, we were every grouping of people that we were around had an opinion on different parents. So my stepdad came into my life when I was 7. So you've got my dad, my bio dad, my mom, my stepdad. We had all of our grandparents were divorced. Biological grandparents were divorced. And my stepfather's parents were very much in our lives. So we had like 5 families that we were going to. And so when you show up at like my paternal grandfather's house, the way I act is a representation of how my mother's raising me. And they have their own opinions about my mother. And I want to be a good ambassador for her. Right. And so it's just like, you're like, and then people are saying things about your mom and you're 9 and you're like, I don't want you to, you know, so it's like this constant thing of masking and everything's okay. And then also, you know, you're too much, you're too sensitive. Why you? And it's like, well, because you just should talk to my mom. Like, what do you mean? Why am I so sensitive? And so, you know, there was a lot of family dynamics going on. And I think God bless my family. I mean, I have some great uncles and aunts, but they were also, I would say, not exactly trauma informed. Right. And so, and it's like, you're the child that's gone through this divorce and there's a lot going on and you're traveling around with your siblings and there's step parents that, you know, our little sister's mom, it's very hard to say and complicated, but like didn't really like us and didn't really treat us well. And so that was hard too. And you're just trying to always seem okay and trying to always, like I said, be a good ambassador as a representative of your parents. But that changes depending on who you're with and who you're trying to represent in any given moment. And that is fraught. It makes me really good at a lot of things, right? I'm great at dropping into different groups. And, you know, I've had like coaching sessions right after I receive really bad news and I'm able to like drop it and, you know, go coach somebody. But it makes also for a person that is vulnerable to somebody that is happy to, like I said, press that button that says not enough, not enough, not enough. Yeah.
Yes. Or it's like I don't know, I kind of related to like being your puppeteer almost. Like you said something super relatable about performing all the time. And, you know, you finally start telling yourself, okay, if I check enough boxes, like you finally arrive at this moment where you're like, okay, I made it. I'm finally enough. But like the bar then keeps getting raised and you're never enough. Or you keep telling yourself, well, I just have to get this to this level. I just have to meet myself here. And then they'll be like, yep, you're great. I love you for you. But then it never happens. And so I'm curious, how would you define chasing?
It looks like the sort of questioning face what does it of is like dinner good life? Enough? Like that to me, it's like did I do everything right? Did I check all the, like you said, did I check all the boxes? Did I, if I could have had a board with like all the lists of things that I need to do on any given day, I would have loved that and checked it off. I think of things like, I was always the coffee drinker in my house with my ex. And then during COVID, he got like really into coffee. And so suddenly I had a pour over. Set up just because we had cockroaches. And he'd gotten me this little like one coffee cup like machine at some point when we moved in together. And at some point I opened it up and like 2 little cockroaches like came out like, hello. And I was like, that's horrible. So I threw it away and I just did pour over because it was like the best option. So it wasn't like I was like a coffee connoisseur. And then he gets really into coffee. And now this thing that was just my morning, not a big deal, is suddenly that I have to do it the right way. And instead of him being like, I'll just make the coffee. I'm obsessive about coffee. I'll just do it. Now I have to do it the right way. And I have to, he had there was a scale that had like timers on it and you had to like do the bloom. It was a whole thing. And it was,
oh my God.
This does sound a little controlling, doesn't he? He was very, I will say this.
Oh my goodness.
Hyper-focused on his obsessions. I actually had a list. I still have the list on my phone of like all of the things he became like obsessed with throughout our relationship. And like we would read it together and laugh. And so I would do that. And then when again, not a bad person, but it's not right for me.
Very nice.
And so it was a lot, right? But it was like, instead of, if I felt like that about something, or if you felt like, you'd be like, I'll do it. I'm weird about it. Like, I'll handle it. And so when I like moved into my own place, I think I just like made instant coffee. And when I came to visit my husband for the first time, he wasn't my husband then, Thomas, my husband's name. When I came to visit Thomas, I came for 2 weeks and he did everything. He paid for everything. Like, I don't remember making one meal. But for a couple of nights, we went to an Airbnb. I had credit from my canceled wedding on Airbnb. And I was like, this is perfect. I'll use it with my new lover in Scotland. So we went to an Airbnb and I got up before him and I was like, I'm going to make coffee. And I was like, it was a French press. And I'm like Googling how to make coffee in a French press. And I made coffee and I guess I did it fine. And he was just grateful that I made him coffee. And every time I'd be like, well, how many teaspoons, how do I do it? And he'd be like, you put like 3 spoonfuls in the thing and then you pour water on it and then you press it down. Like, he just didn't care. He was just like, I'm so grateful that somebody's making me coffee and bringing it to me in bed. And still every day I would say, not every day, but still there's things that happen. Like, I'll be at the grocery store and I'll be like, they don't have the meat that he likes for his sandwiches. And I'll be like, I should call him. And then I'll be like, he trusts you to just buy different deli meat. Like, it's okay. And he'll be like, this is great. I never thought of this deli meat. He's so excited about it, but it's a really different dynamic. And it really starts making you realize like, oh, I was played. Like, my anxieties were perfect for what he was wanted to do, which is, I think he really wanted to have things exactly his way. And I think, if you want things exactly your way, then you maybe need to either be with the right person or not with anybody. And I wasn't the right person for that, because that's not going to be me. And it's so funny that we did this podcast today, because like my husband happened to be home from work today. And so I haven't made one meal today. I haven't made one meal today. And he is amazing. Yes. He is amazing. And I will let him know, because every time I'm like, I talked about you. And he's like, what did you say? He is amazing. And yeah, always. He's amazing. And he's also like my biggest fan when it, like, and he's my biggest fan generally, but in the kitchen, like it makes me laugh sometimes because he'll be like, I made chili the other night and then I didn't want to eat it. Like I just wasn't. And I made myself some eggs and he was like, why would you not like this chili? Like he was offended for the chef, but I was the chef. He was like, this is amazing. You know, he's just a really big fan of my cooking and generally me. But I think I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that this was available. I didn't even know that somebody could like be so positive about you. And so I think that the chasing worthiness, it looks like just trying to get it right all of the time. And I think that probably what ends up happening is you get it wrong more, to be honest with you, because I think if you're I always think of it, my sister, I think, laughs at me because I make these references and she's like, nobody knows what you're talking about. Do you know those, toys that used to get these very cheap and it's like a plastic tube and it's got liquid in it and you sort of like grab it and it like floops up? That's what chasing worthiness feels like to me. You're trying to grab this thing and the more you try to grab it, it just sort of spins up into the air. It's like the more you try to be perfect, the less it's going to happen. And the goal isn't trying to be perfect. The goal is finding somebody or yourself being somebody that you are safe to be imperfect with, that you're safe to not get it right, that you're safe. You know, the difference between with my ex when I would make a dinner and it wouldn't be good and I would just feel horrible versus with my husband, I made something recently and we were both like, this is not good. Like, and we can laugh about it. And I was just like, yeah, no, I did not nail it with this one. Yeah. And then the next night I'll make something and he's like, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. And so, you know, I think being able to laugh at yourself. And I think for somebody who's so, focused on getting things right as I am, having somebody that you feel really safe getting things wrong with, because that extends to everything, right? Because then suddenly it's not, you're not feeling so defensive if you use the wrong tone with somebody. Because I think that sort of perfectionism and that worthiness goes everywhere. Because if you're talking to somebody and you're kind of curt with them and they say, hey, you were a little curt with me and you need to be worthy of their love, you're like, no, I wasn't actually. Whereas if I say something to my husband, I'm like, oh, that came out wrong. I did not mean to sound like that. And he's just like, oh yeah, no, I know. Like, I got you. And I think so that worthiness sort of extends everywhere and it doesn't necessarily make you, no, I don't want to say lovable, but like that chasing that worthiness doesn't always make you the best partner. Like it has like an inverse effect. You think it'll make you the best partner if you're just perfect and worthy all the time, but also it actually makes you sort of, a lot to for yourself, you're a lot. And for them, you're a lot. And it's like this other thing. I mean, you know, I can't imagine what it would be like to be in that activated worthy state with my husband now, right? With somebody that doesn't need it, but it's an interesting thought experiment. Yeah.
Totally. I was also going to say, you're also equating yourself to a doormat where you have no boundaries and it's just you're constantly laying down for everyone else. I want to circle back around to something because I feel like this is so exciting to talk about. And I love that you found your person. We talked a little bit, I guess at the very beginning, you're like, well, my ex was not my person, and how you figured that out after 10 years, you know, was, I guess, a blessing in disguise, because then you met your husband and, you know, now you're happily in a relationship. And how do you get to the point where you're not chasing worthiness anymore? Like, at what point, you know, did you feel like your body wasn't in shock because you were constantly performing for someone else? And you're just like, you know what? I can be myself around you and I feel so good. I just want to know, how'd you do that?
Okay. Yeah, I think there was this, I never thought about that question, but what comes to mind is this moment that happened. So I broke up with my ex. I moved back to my mom's house and I reached out to Thomas and I was like, you know, having this really romantic thing. And my mom had been there when we met. And so my mom's like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. It's so romantic. It's so cool, whatever. And 2 days into talking to him, I really wanted him to know that I liked him a lot. 2 days. So really quick. And I think we'd had our first phone conversation. It went from like texting to phone. And I'm still living at my mom's. I had signed a lease on a new place, but I'm right, fresh out of my breakup, haven't lived at my mom's house, since my early 20s. And I'm impulsive. I'm feeling wild. I'm feeling cool. And I'm like trying to tell him how much I like him. And so I book a ticket to see him. And I booked the ticket for 2 weeks to come see him, 2 weeks from then. So I would have been away from like the middle of July until my birthday, which is July 31st. It was still during strong COVID restrictions. So I would have had to be locked down in his apartment for 10 days, this apartment that I'm in now, for 10 days. But he also, by the way, was moving July 1st into this apartment. So, and my husband has a heart defect, much like my sister. And so was born with a heart defect. So he was on like super lockdown. Like he hadn't seen anybody in 18 months. He hadn't really been in a room with anybody outside of like getting his COVID shot, like with a mask on in 18 months. Okay. So he's coming from extreme isolation.
Right.
Yeah. And I book a ticket, and I always laugh because I'm like, I think I paid $1,200 for that ticket, and I've never paid more than $700 to fly back and forth since then. And so I'm like, this is the most romantic. Yeah, I'm like, this is the most romantic thing in the world. And I go downstairs at my mom's house, and my mom and my stepdad, who is an Italian American, and I go downstairs, and he's like traditional, I go downstairs and I was like, guess what I did? And they're like, what? And I said, I booked a ticket to Scotland. And their like faces fell. And my stepdad was like, what are you talking about? And they both start like yelling at me. And I was like, what? But I thought this was romantic. Like, I'm so confused. And my mom was like, he's going to kill you and everything. And everybody's freaking out. And I'm so confused. But by the way, it's like 2 a.m.
Oh my God.
And my husband's on furlough, so he's not working. So he's up all night, right? Just talking to me. He'd just gone to bed. It's like 2 a.m. And I said to my mom, and this was like probably the first time I ever said this to her. I said, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to make my decision based on what you're saying, but I'm going to consider what you're saying. Mm-hmm. That was a big moment for me. That was a really big moment for me. And I sat on the steps at my mom's house, and I thought, what am I going to do?
Right.
And I thought, this was probably too impulsive. And I thought, I don't want to cancel, because what if he's mad at me? And then I thought, you're willing to fly 7 hours across the world to a country where you don't know anybody, go stay in an apartment with somebody you can't leave for 10 days because he might be mad at you? You've been talking to him for 2 days. You don't know this person. If they extracted him from your life with a little tweezer, you would never even know. You would never even know. And you're willing to put yourself in that much danger because so this guy's not mad at you? Who cares? Who cares if he's mad at you? And I thought, who cares if he's mad at you? Like, and that was the thing that I think that was my chasing. That was like when it started degrading, the chasing worthiness was like, who cares if he's mad at you? He's nobody to you at this point, right?
Yeah.
He's just a nice accent on the other side of the phone. And so I called him.
I do love an accent. So yes, Jenny, yes.
I gotta tell you, my husband has a particularly wonderful accent and a particularly wonderful voice. Everybody keeps telling him he has to do voiceover work. And I'm like, trust me, we've tried. It's a very hard industry to get into. My friends are like, can he do like spicy videos? I'm like, no, he won't do that. I tried. He wouldn't do it. And so I called him, and it's like 5 hours ahead, right? So I think it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and he'd just gone to sleep. And he wakes up and he's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, I think I have to cancel my ticket. And he said, okay, why? And I said, because I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's a good idea. And he said, well, I never want you to feel unsafe with me. He said, I always want you to feel safe. I want you to feel that I'm holding you like a hummingbird in my hands, which is why my future sister-in-law made that for me. It's a hummingbird. And he said, I never want you to feel unsafe. And it was like, oh, okay. He's not mad at me. And I sort of had to process that he might be mad at me, and fuck that guy if he was, right? Yeah. And so he wasn't. And he was like, oh, and he told me later, he was like, I was so relieved. He was like, I hadn't gotten a haircut in 18 months. Like, he was just like, he was like, I was moving. It wouldn't have set us up for success. That's what I would say. And so I canceled my ticket. And I went downstairs, and I'm sitting on the stairs at my mom's house, and my mom comes over, and she's calmed down, and I've calmed down. I said, I canceled it. And she said, how did he react? And I said, he was lovely. And she said, oh no. She said, you're screwed. Yeah, and I said, I'm screwed. And, I ended up
right then. Yeah.
And yeah, it was like, oh my God. And so I ended up then going over 3 months later, and we talked every night. It was a very different relationship than 2 days in, and the COVID restrictions were a bit looser, so I didn't have to quarantine for it. But I think that was when it started. I think that one of the things somebody had said to me, I think my stepdad said, was people are going to think you're crazy if you go fly to Scotland,
after 2 days. Yeah.
And I said to him, they already think I'm crazy. I just blew up my life, right? Like, I was with my ex for 10 years. He was the uncle to my nephews. We were all involved in each other's families. Like, I blew up my life. I literally just walked away from a full apartment. Like, they already think I'm crazy. And I think it was that. And then in combination with falling in love with my husband and wanting to seem cool and perfect and all these things, and him just being like, I don't care. Like, I just want you. You're worthy. Like, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to make anything. You don't have to, cook. You don't have to do this. And it was funny because I was saying to him tonight that I haven't had that sort of like looking down the long hallway of your life of meals again since I left my ex. But sometimes every once in a while I'll text him from the grocery store, and I'll be like, cause I work from home. He works outside of the house. So I often go to the grocery store during the week, and he tends to take care of the weekends. And so I'll text him from work while he's at work, and I'll be like, I have no idea what to have for dinner. And he'll just be like, we're going to have this. And he just tells me, and I'm like, oh, and he just knows that, like, it's because it's not, as you know, it's not the cooking. It's not the shopping. It's the mental load of worrying about what is somebody else going to want to eat. Mm-hmm. And I was saying to him tonight, he was home, and he said, I'm going to make a pot of curry, because then you won't have to worry about what we're eating for the next like 4 days. Like, it'll take care of us. Yeah. And I said, you were really smart to step in, because I wasn't burnt out on cooking yet, but I was probably headed there. I've been really creative recently, which I think being really creative, and then eventually you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm exhausted. Like, cereal? I don't know. Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, you stepped in beforehand. And he's like, I know. He was like, I know what I'm doing here. And so I think, I think that the worthiness started breaking down when it was like, I think the question was, maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe, right? Like, you kind of have to throw your arms up in the air and go, if this is what chasing worthiness is, then I don't want to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And if this is what it looks like, then I don't want to do that, because I'm never getting it right. I never get an A+ from my partner. Not everything I did. If I made cookies that I couldn't eat because I'm allergic to cow's milk, I'm allergic to butter. So I would make him cookies, and then he'd be like eating the cookies, but then also tell me I shouldn't have made the cookies because he shouldn't be eating that.
Oh my God.
It was, you can't win for losing. Like, right, really, right. Like, there was nothing I could do that was the right thing to do. There was comments about my clothes and what I was wearing. And like I said later, about my body. And so it was like, there was nothing that I could do. And it was kind of like, he's really outdoorsy and I'm not. And a little bit I was like, why are you with me? Go be with somebody that likes the things you like, and then you don't have to torture her with all of this. So I think throwing up my arms in the air and going, I'm done with that. And then making a choice that was potentially a relationship ending with my now husband, right? Of, I'm not going to get on this plane, I'm going to cancel my ticket, was also the next step. And then it just sort of, I always feel like I just take the next right step. Yeah. And I think, my husband sort of would clear the path and be like, maybe this one. And I'd be like, maybe that one. And I would just step onto that. And that was sort of the journey back.
Nice. To get there, though, did you have to do any real deep digging?
Yes.
Like personally, I mean, it might be a little personal question, like therapy or
meditating
or any of that stuff, because like, I mean, you're amazing if you could pull out of that without, having any type of tool.
My therapist, Christine, was a big part of that. I was working with her before I broke up with my ex. I worked with her after I broke up with my ex. I've taken breaks. I worked with her last year. I mean, it's funny. It's this perfectionist thing, right? Yes. It always comes up. And I'll get to what the funny thing, or the less funny thing. But the funny thing was that after I broke up with my ex, I texted her and I said, I just want you to know I broke up with him. And she goes, do you want to do an emergency session? And I said, no, I think I'm okay. She goes, I thought so. She goes, I knew.
Nice. She knew.
And so, but like even as recently as maybe 2 years ago, I want to tell this story first, which is unrelated but related. The level of perfectionism with me is that I should never mess up and I should know all the bad things that are going to happen. So when COVID canceled my wedding, I thought I should have known that a global pandemic was going to cancel my wedding. Now, I don't know why I thought I would have that knowledge, but that's how my brain works.
A lot of pressure, right?
You didn't plan for this. Mm-hmm. You're stupid because you didn't plan for this. So I was hanging out with my husband one night on the bed. We were just like sitting on the bed and I jumped up to kiss him. And I hit him in the face, like accidentally. And he goes, ow. He said, ow. And I lost it, like hysterically crying, just a mess. Like he was the one that got hurt. I wasn't mad at him. I felt so foolish and embarrassed in that moment and unworthy, right? And just so bad. And that I said, okay, I'm going to call Christine back up. And I started back up and I was doing that for like a year. And that's sort of my relationship, with therapy is in and out as needed. Mm-hmm. But yes, I did therapy. I did a lot of long walks by myself. There's a part of me, Natalie, that's honestly very sad because that year that I lived in this very overpriced, very cute apartment, right near my family, I had no tolerance for anybody else. I just couldn't be around people very long. Yeah. And it's sad to me now because now I live in Scotland. And for that period of time, I lived 4 minutes down the road from my parents. Now I was seeing them obviously, more than I see them now. But I'm like, my sister would come over and work at my house and I wouldn't push her out of the house. But when she would leave, I'd be like, thank God, right. I just couldn't be with people. But I spent a lot of time. Olivia and I are from a very cute town and I was able to walk into town and I was able to walk to the park and I would just go out, no headphones or anything, and just a lot of really thoughtful walks about Thomas and what I was going to do next. Because it's a whole other thing, which we can talk about another time, but like Thomas and I have a great story and I wanted to really make sure that I was falling in love with the man and not the story.
Right.
And so, but I would do a lot of that and the therapy, I think, was key to it. I always wrote poetry and I started writing poetry again, which I hadn't done in 10 years. I started listening to a lot of music again, which I hadn't done really, music always breaks me open. And I think I avoided it for a long time because I couldn't afford to be broken open. And so I listened to music a lot. I danced in my house a lot. I didn't cook for a whole year. I mean, dinner was pretty much Trader Joe's frozen cauliflower gnocchi like every night. I very intentionally didn't cook. And it took me a long time. And the first time I cooked for somebody again was I cooked for a girlfriend of mine who, we went away for the weekend together and I cooked for her. And that was lovely. I had to really find my way back to myself, but therapy was a big part of that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I always like to see what people do to get themselves unstuck or hear what other people are doing because there's so much you can do. Like you said, long walks, listening to music, which I love to do as well. Because it's helpful to have a wide variety of tools and not just hole yourself in your house, because I feel like I did that probably for the first year and a half after my divorce. Like I was embarrassed and I was defeated and just felt like shit, really. And I'm like, oh my God, I just blew up my life and I don't even know where to go from here. So that's great.
I think, and I think a final piece of it too has been, I've always had a complicated relationship with exercise.
Yes.
Because I had an asthma, exercise-induced asthma, which nobody knew about until after my first half marathon.
Oh my gosh.
And so, a lot of my exercise as an adult came along with my ex. Mm-hmm. And, there were times that it was very encouraging, and there were times where it felt more about my body than other times. And there were times when I would go through swimming periods where I would go swim laps. And now, as of June, I've been part of a gym near me, and I swim about 3 to 4 kilometers a week. And it's the first time in my life where it's like, it's just about
movement,
supporting my body. Yeah. It's about supporting my body. And it's about, like, I love being in the water, and it's about the 30 minutes that I'm in the water where I don't have my phone, and like all of that, and the sauna afterwards. But it's the first time, I've done this before. I've joined pools to swim laps before, and it's never been like this. And I think that's part of it too, of like, my husband's always proud of me because he's proud of me for dedicating myself to something, not because I'm like getting smaller, and who knows, I don't know if that's how swimming works. It doesn't seem to be. And I'm not concerned about it. But like, I think to have somebody, I would so often walk out of my bedroom with my ex in like a black tank top and black leggings. He'd be like, you going for a run? You going for a run? Like, no, I can see that you want me to. Like, and it doesn't feel good. And so I think the final piece for me has been finding this really healthy relationship with exercise and with moving my body that feels celebratory, and that doesn't feel like a punishment, and that doesn't feel, one of the things that's important to me is I don't do it the first thing in the morning. I allow myself to think about it. Like, I allow myself to know you're going to exercise soon. It's not something I'm trying to rush through. It's something that I'm just enjoying. And that feels like the final piece for me, specifically related to my relationships.
Nice. Well, and maybe could we clone Thomas, for some of us back here in the States?
I wish people are like, do you have friends? Do you have brothers?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're available. I'm so sorry. Yeah, he's a special guy. And he's a little bit older than me, which I think helps. And, he's done a lot of mental work. He's
mature. He's one of those mature guys. Oh my God.
He's mature guys. He's a poet and a playwright and a musician. Like I'm terrified every day because I'm so like, that's the best way to put it. But I feel very fortunate. And that's why people are like, you moved to Scotland? I'm like, you don't know my husband. You would move anywhere in the world. I'm very lucky that he lived in Edinburgh because it's a great city, but I would have moved to wherever to be with him.
Yeah. No, easy. I love that for you, Jenny. I'm so happy for you. That's great.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. We've covered quite a lot, and I'm excited that we get to share this with people because I think it's super important that we learn that we are worthy. We don't have to chase someone else's expectations of ourselves. So I wanted to see if there's anything else that you were thinking about that you wanted to share that we haven't already covered.
I mean, the thing that I always say to people is that it doesn't have to be bad for it not to be good. Mm-hmm. Like, I believe you're allowed to leave a relationship for any reason, whether that maybe you should go see a therapist about that. Maybe, but like, you're allowed to leave for any reason. If it's not working for you, it's not working. That's totally okay. And you also are allowed to explore the ceiling of your joy. Like, you're allowed to see how high that goes, because I think in a lot of relationships, we're told it's enough and we're fine. And, you're making the good girl choice. But like, the reality is there's no checkbox. There's no, form that you can sign off. And nobody's going to get to you at the end and go, you did everything exactly right.
Right.
I tried doing everything exactly right in a lot of ways. And it didn't end with me happy. It didn't end with him happy. And I think that's why I think divorce can be such a powerful tool, which is people get to go live their own happy lives afterwards. Yeah. They get to live their best lives if they explore it. When I was breaking up with my ex, he said to me, it'll be fine. And I said, no, it has to be bigger than fine. We have fine. We're fine now. I said, we have to go both and create beautiful lives for ourselves. And I haven't caught up with him in a while, but I know I've done that for myself. I think that he's good. I mean, the last I hear, I talked to him about maybe 18 months ago. I accidentally had something sent to his house, and it was a fake wizard potion for my nephew that was called like death poison or something. And he texted me and he goes, did you want me to take this? And I was like, oh my God. And we talked and we caught up, and I said, I just want you to say thank you, because it would have been hard for me to leave on my own. I needed that push. And I said, now I get to live this beautiful life. So I think just you are allowed to explore the ceiling of your joy, and you're allowed to be happy, really. And you might not even know how happy you can be.
Yeah, well said. Oh, great final words. I love that so much. Thank you, Jenny, for joining us today. It's great chatting with you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.